Obrigado. So, good afternoon to you all.
Ainda não começou também.
Okay. We are going to give 2 or 3 minutes more to see if people arrive from lunch.
Pode
Been a
começar,
long
professor.
an extended lunch break.
Yes,
Yes.
we in Portugal like long lunches.
Yeah. I've been in Lisbon a number of times. I
Right.
go there to teach generally once a year in September
Okay.
at ICTA. And I didn't go last year because of COVID,
Right.
but I'm due to go this year. I just responded to your message to me, Sandra. I'm hoping that the global climate is okay to travel, September this year. So I will be in Lisbon. I visited Porto. When was it? When did COVID start?
The
January,
end of 19?
January 2020, when COVID began, spreading
Yes.
the news all over. I was
Yes.
actually in Lisbon. I was working with the director of international relations and 2 colleagues to do a grant application.
Great.
Funding. I went there for 3 weeks just to write the grant application. And my daughter joined me. She was also working during the day. And we had some lovely times together over the weekends. And we spent 1 weekend in Porto.
Great.
And I absolutely loved the place.
Just to
So
say that
you're in
we are
Portugal.
alive. Just to say that we are alive in YouTube.
Okay. So thank you, Anna. We will start with the presentation of Professor Vishanti Sipul. It's how we spell it?
Sipul, that's right.
Okay. An awardee of 3 honorary doctoral degrees from Chile, Norway, and Sweden. She is globally recognized social work and human rights scholar, international speaker, and activist. She held leadership positions at institutional, national, regional, and global levels, and visiting professor positions at numerous international universities. She chaired the following committees on behalf of the International Association of Schools of Social Work: Global Standards for Social Work Education and Training, 2004, Global Social Work Definition, 2014, and the Global Social Work Statement of Ethical Principles, 2018. She is currently the world coordinator for a conference to the co-hosted by 3 global social development organizations in 2024. She was senior professor at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, where she remains emeritus professor and adjunct professor at the University of Stavanger, Norway. She has over 100 academic publications and has recently completed her memoir titled The Arc of Our Paths, Growing into Holiness. Thank you, Professor Vishanti Sipul. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I hope this will be the beginning of many collaborations.
Thank you so much, Paulo. As you can see, I'm not in a bikini. I'm not sitting at the beach. Okay, although I have this background, but I want to do something, and it would be really nice if a few of us can maybe put on our cameras so that I can see you just for the beginning part of this presentation. Yeah, thank you so much, Nida. Okay, anyone else? Okay, Gonzalo is joining us. Anyone else joining us with a face?
We are shy at the beginning.
Some people are shy, okay, but there's Agostino as well. Okay, and there's Jacqueline, lovely. We've had so much of academia, the whole of yesterday and today. I thought maybe I'd try something a little bit different. I could have chosen to, be in my own home office or, chosen a different background, but I chose this really beautiful Caribbean sunshine and ocean. And what I want you to do is take a real good look at it and let it imprint in your mind. Let the image imprint in your mind, bringing in a little bit of Sandra's art here and, something different, feelings, emotions. Let it imprint in your mind. And for a moment, I want you to just trust me and close your eyes with that image in your mind. Keep the image in your mind and close your eyes and picture yourself. It's okay, you can close your eyes, it's safe. Close your eyes. And I want you to picture yourself as dynamic and as fluid as this ocean. A fluidity that allows us to be open to new ideas, experiences, and feelings, riding the ebbs and flows of the waves with ease and no judgment. Yes, no judgment whatsoever. You are the detached observer of your thoughts and feelings. Also picture yourself as an indivisible part of this ocean. As a drop of water is an indivisible part of this ocean, so too are we an indivisible part of the universe. The ocean is indeed mightier than the drop, but without each drop, there is no ocean. So powerful is a single drop that Rumi, the great 13th century poet and Islamic scholar, said, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in the drop." In our shared divinity and humanity, each one of us is special and unique. And each one of us, as Einstein said, comes upon this earth for a brief period to fulfill a seemingly divine purpose. Now, this is for you, Anna Branca. Rumi also said, if you want to hold the beautiful one, hold yourself to yourself. So put your arms around yourself and give yourself a hug. Yesterday, we were talking about how we miss our hugs. Hard to hug other people with COVID, physical distancing, but we can hug ourselves and tell yourself something nice about yourself, like, I love me. We're so often taught to tell other people, I love you, but tell yourself, I love me. With that, friends, I greet you with Namaste. Namaste circumvents the good morning, the good evening, good afternoon in different parts of the world. But more importantly is its meaning. It means that the divinity in me greets the divinity in you. The divine light that is in me is in you too. And I think it is such a profound greeting. And it's a preoccupation that all of us, I think, on this session, whether you're on YouTube or in front of the screen with me now, is totally preoccupied with. How do we engender the sense of equality amongst us? Friends and colleagues, it is really my pleasure to spend this bit of time with you. Congratulations to the conference organizers, and thank you to Sandra Mendes for the invitation to participate. As we know, COVID-19 took the world by storm in 2020. And as it did so, many of us felt we were walking the tightrope of a science fiction, caught in a whirlwind of rising infections and deaths, job losses, crashing economies, closed borders, lockdowns, and stay-at-home orders. As the virus is wreaking havoc across the borders, we appreciate just how interconnected our world is, with challenges to the most advanced economies of the world. Many of us are questioning the meaning of the pandemic and what long-term implications it might have for humanity. In the beginning, many of us hoped that COVID-19 will be the great equalizer that the world is so much in need of. But what we are seeing is that it is exacerbating existing inequalities and power imbalances. But we still ask, would COVID-19 be the great liberator that frees humankind from the chains of its own greed? Would it induce a fundamental reordering of human values that help us heal the world? Might it force us to acknowledge what we have always known but choose to ignore, the profound interconnectedness between the self and the universe? Is it a harbinger of a global collective awakening of consciousness? A warning that if we as human beings refuse to take care of the whole of nature, nature will find ways of taking care of itself. Now, as Jose said earlier today, we don't know the future. But I think what we do know is that the answers to the questions that I raised will depend on motivated human action and the way we manage the infrapolitics of power. COVID-19 is invading the spaces within which we breathe, live, learn, love, marry, work, play, and die. But these personal spaces exist within the spaces of the infrapolitics of power. And what we're seeing across the globe is that the fissures of the social fault lines based on social criteria such as nationality, race, class, gender, disability, sexuality, are running far, far deeper than we could have imagined, with human costs that are inconceivable. Over the past 40 years, but with deeper historical antecedents, neoliberalism has become entrenched features of societies across the world. According to a 2020 UNDP report titled The Next Frontier, Human Development and the Anthropocene, the global financial crisis, the climate crisis, the inequality crisis, and the COVID-19 crisis have all shown that the resilience of the system itself is breaking down. Inequalities abound within and across nation states and continents. And it is not surprising at all that the USA, the epitome of neoliberalism and one of the richest, yet the most unequal country in the global world, has actually fared very, very poorly in its response to COVID-19. Neoliberalism is both a precursor to COVID-19 and a cause of some of the devastating consequences of the virus. It is exacerbating the crisis of the neoliberal state, and it reflects the moral emptiness of neoliberalism. The worst hit countries like Brazil, the USA, UK, Russia, India, South Africa are all characterized by neoliberal deregulation. In contrast, social welfare systems with strong social security and solidarity have been more resilient and adopted better COVID-19 defense strategies. With liberalized trade and costs of production being outsourced to the places of cheapest labor, it is not surprising that as COVID-19 halted global trade and travel, the UK, the USA, and the European Union struggled to provide essentials such as masks, protective equipment, ventilators, and so on, compared with some of their Asian counterparts in China, South Korea, and Vietnam. According to DRULAC, with the pandemic, Europe learned that 80% of the ingredients required to produce medicines came from China and India, revealing the bitter fruits of outsourcing production to cheaper countries. Keynes, way back, we know about Keynesian economics. Keynes, way back in 1933, argued that experience accumulates to prove that most modern processes of mass production can be performed in most countries and climates with equal efficiency. National self-sufficiency, he says, though it costs something, may be a luxury we can afford if we want it to happen. And I think for me, therein lay the crunch, if we want it to happen, as states across the world submit to neoliberalism. Despite the vast body of research that reflects its destructive consequences, neoliberal capitalism succeeds through ideological control of consciousness, designed to make us believe it is in our interest and that it is inevitable. The fish living in the water that Paulo talked about there, the extent to which we normalize and naturalize it. COVID-19 has also revealed the weaknesses of public health systems, not only in poor, but in the richest countries as well. And much has been reported about the incapacities of hospitals to deal with the crisis. However, it's actually neoliberal austerity that eroded health and welfare systems long before COVID-19. And just one example that Schröder provides is the systematic cuts in healthcare spending in Germany. In the mid-1990s, there were 2,325 hospitals there, which by 2017 was reduced to 1,942, and 3 years later to 1,400, accompanied by a critical shortage of doctors and carers. And he concluded, and I quote, "If the European Union really cared about the future of Europe, they would have to first of all revise all the Euro treaties that have imposed a policy of privatization and reduction in social spending on member states." While global solidarity is critical to deal with the pernicious consequences of COVID-19, it is evident that national self-sufficiencies, resources, capacities, and ethical leadership constitute quintessential criteria that determine how nation states engage in preventing the spread of the virus and in mitigating the effects of the virus. With new public management being an operational arm of neoliberalism, the dominant ethos is bureaucratization of services, top-down control, the use of checklists, quantification, measurements, and narrowly defined evidence and efficiency. And we know that efficiency means doing more with lesser resources within the shortest periods of time. Keller points to the impact of new public management in the services sector, saying, "It is simply impossible for a nurse to treat 5% more patients every year, for a teacher to test 5% more students every year, for a social worker to manage a growing number of clients every year." Yet, this is precisely what neoliberalism and new public management demands, inducing much collateral damages and negative outcomes. The 2020 UNDP report draws the link between the unleashing of viruses and the pressures that we put on the earth. It says, "Humans have achieved incredible things, but we have taken the earth to the brink. Climate change, rupturing inequalities, record numbers of people forced from their homes by conflict and crisis. These are the results of societies that value what they measure instead of measuring what they value. we know that planetary imbalances and social imbalances exacerbate each other. Now, recognizing the relationship between social and environmental justice is not something that is new. Way back in 1944, Carl Polanyi wrote, "To allow the market mechanism to be the sole director of the fate of human beings and their natural environment would result in the demolition of society." The UNDP calls for redesigning a path to progress that respects the intertwined fate of people and the planet. Owners of digital media and big pharma are the biggest winners in this age of pandemic. Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft all increased their revenues exorbitantly during the pandemic. While corporate elites are benefiting from the crisis, it is estimated that the pandemic may have pushed some 100 million people into extreme poverty. In fact, this is the worst in a generation. High-tech companies are poising themselves as the saviors, but with profit as the real motive. Naomi Klein points out that the discursive shifts are earning big tech companies premium spaces with political partners. And these political partners are desperate in the search for solutions and are therefore parting with a lot of state funds to tech-based companies. Klein questions the use of public funding for these tech companies and asks about public ownership and control rather than the creation of multi-billionaire individuals. In response to these proposed tech solutions, Klein cites Andy Pallotta, president of the New York State United Teachers Union, who said, "If we want to reimagine education, let's start with addressing the need for social workers, school nurses, enriching arts courses." Here you go, Sandra. Advanced courses and smaller class sizes. In the conclusion to her treatise, Klein asserts, "We face real hard choices between investing in humans and investing in technology. The brutal truth is we are unlikely to do both. If tech companies win their ferocious lobbying campaign for remote learning, telehealth, 5G, and driverless vehicles, their Green New Deal, there simply won't be enough money for urgent public priorities. Never mind the Green New Deal that our planet urgently needs." She says, "On the contrary, the price tag for all the shiny gadgets will be mass teacher layoffs and hospital closures." Technological advances and responses are double-edged swords. While they do provide solutions, they also further the divides between the haves and the have-nots and hold the potential to exacerbate poverty and inequality. Liberal states giving way to the interests of national and private corporate interests is made evident in the unequal access to vaccines across the global north and the global south. Although pharmaceutical companies use mainly public purses to fund research and development of the vaccines, they are bent on retaining private profits. With India and South Africa as the forerunners in their call, public pressure is mounting on the World Trade Organization to waive intellectual property and patent rights so that the vaccines may be domestically produced to save lives. Unfortunately, the obstructionists are the World Bank and high-income countries, such as the UK, Canada, Norway, and the European Union. Ironically, while these countries are buying up and hoarding the vaccines, leaving little for low and middle income countries, they are the ones who are objecting to a waiver that can increase supply and access to people in the more developing parts of the world. The lockdowns, as we all know, have produced real and perceived threats to democratic freedoms. A lingering question is, might COVID-19 intensify states' growing authoritarianism and the use of digital surveillance to reduce freedoms? In many countries, the police and the army have been called to impose lockdown rules and to control public behavior. In some countries, security forces have used excessive and sometimes deadly force in implementing lockdown rules. Abuse of power by the military and police must produce for us bells of caution. As some autocratic regimes institute sweeping powers during national disasters that violate the constitutional rights of people. And this may actually last well beyond the disaster, in this case, the pandemic. And it would be prudent for us to note that the Egyptian emergency law that was passed during the Arab-Israeli War in 1967 was only rescinded in 2012 when Mubarak was removed from power. The emergency law adopted by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accorded him power of surveillance of citizens and the power to delay his own corruption trial. We do live in the hope that the COVID-19 crisis, which enforced state intervention, would contribute to a world based on more social democratic principles. I sincerely hope that, because the alternative is frightening, which is, in the words of Singh, is that it can lead the world towards a new form of fascism through state control of every sphere of life. So, in the face of all this, how do we build back better for sustainable, resilient recovery? Some degree of fear and anxiety are anticipated responses to an invisible virus wreaking havoc across the globe. And this is being accentuated by much disinformation and conspiracy theories about the virus and about its antidote, the vaccines. Given the impacts of colonialism, of neocolonialism, narrow nationalism, corporate greed, and global racialized capitalism, one can understand the skepticism among so many people. Mistrust abounds, and when this happens, it renders people more uncertain, fearful, and anxious. There is an ethical obligation for those of us in more privileged spaces particularly, to share accurate information, to challenge the disinformation that's going around, and to provide mental health and other needed services. Several authors speculate that the world will be different after COVID-19. For sure, the world will be different. But the question is, what shape and form would this difference take? A singular question remains. Would neoliberalism collapse under its own weight? Maya asserts that when the protection of life becomes a societal priority, the dominance of markets is challenged. By prioritizing life over exchange value, COVID-19 is challenging key assumptions of neoliberal capitalism. Taking care of the planet and of people's health and well-being means shifting beyond neoliberalism that privileged self-reliance and wage labor to embracing the idea that all people deserve to be able to live, even if they cannot work. In the face of lockdowns, the need to preserve lives and livelihoods becomes stark. Despite neoliberal ideas of a minimalist state, COVID-19 has demonstrated that in the face of this very deep crisis, it is the state that has the power to respond. Several countries have responded with stimulus packages and income support for people. many organizations in South Africa have come together into a national basic income grant coalition over the past few decades, well before COVID-19, to advocate for people to have access to a universal basic income grant. The Social Work Action Network of South Africa, in a media statement, pledged support to other social movements, such as the COVID-19 People's Coalition, the Food Sovereignty Campaign, and the Cry of the Excluded for a basic income grant. Now we are doing this, and we've seen increased role of state during COVID-19. But the question still for me remains, would COVID-19 put capitalism on trial? Despite governments now and central banks breaking capitalist rules, which in regular times would seem to be immutable. Some of us, including me in very powerful ways, I think, in relation to the 2007-2008 economic crisis across the globe, thought that that held the potential to create cracks in the consciousness of people about the moral and pragmatic limits of neoliberalism. But given the hegemony of neoliberalism and its entrenched institutions and practices in favor of the capitalist elites who were unwilling to give up their privileges positions, this was not done. And if it has to be done, it will require a very, very strong counter-hegemonic discourse to neoliberalism. It will mean that we envision another and a better world based on egalitarianism and emancipatory politics, with popular movements continuing the pressure in challenging global capitalism. COVID-19 demands that we rethink our world and reject neoliberal dogma in favor of more social democratic alternatives. As a response to the very negative consequences of neoliberalism and new public management, the International Association of Schools of Social Work, the International Federation of Social Workers, and the International Consortium on Social Welfare have as the theme for the 2020-2022 Global Agenda, Ubuntu, strengthening social solidarity and global connectedness. Ubuntu is completely the opposite of neoliberalism and new public management. It is an Afrocentric philosophical worldview that embraces humanism and humanistic ethics. It has been popularized by great souls like Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who demonstrated in very tangible ways how qualities like love, care, compassion, kindness, and forgiveness can be transformed into a very broad socio-political force. While Ubuntu is primarily associated with South Africa, the concept exists in other African and non-African languages and philosophies across the world. If not exactly the concept, certainly the idea of being for the other, as theorists such as Levinas and Bauman call for. And I think this is what Paula talked about yesterday morning. Ubuntu asserts, I am because we are. It embraces a we-centeredness where we accord the unique other that priority assigned to the self. To be responsible means to make oneself available in service of the other in such a way that one's own life is intrinsically linked with that of others. And here we see the affinity between this Afrocentric paradigm and the paradigms of people such as Levinas and Bauman, because they're saying exactly the same thing. So it's not a uniquely African worldview. I think it's a shared universal worldview that we all hold. Ubuntu recognizes the interdependencies amongst us as human beings, between people and all other species, and between people and the environment. Ubuntu calls for pro-social values, attitudes, and thoughts to be made manifest in acts of solidarity at local, national, regional, and global levels. It really does the world no good if some people can be vaccinated against COVID-19 and others can't. Really does us no good at all. Ubuntu means challenging and undoing structural sources of privilege and power, and of disadvantage, violence, exclusion, and oppression. As social workers, we can join broader social movements that advocate for changes in socioeconomic and political governance structures. And we can argue for adequate social protection measures, for debt cancellation, and for more equitable access to treatment and vaccines. We must embrace systems that expand people's choices, freedoms, opportunities, capabilities, and their ability to participate in decision-making so that they lead lives that they value, while easing at the same time planetary pressures. Where one lives and who one is should not determine inclusion, representation, recognition, or whether one lives or dies. Egalitarianism can be achieved by humanism, not a reductionist measure of GDP. Ubuntu holds the sublime values of coexistence, of equality, of solidarity, of peace, of love, justice, and the oneness of humanity. While we advocate for structural changes to ensure that these ideals are realized, and while we clamor on the world to change, we can begin with ourselves. And we can begin by heightening our consciousness about the limits of neoliberal racial capitalism that have become so naturalized features of our world. Yes, we can, as Paulo told us earlier today, to not believe that our thinking is correct, to suspend belief and really question ourselves and the world that we live in. And within our profession, this is no longer something that is a choice. It is an ethical imperative that's reflected in the 2018 IASSW Global Social Work Statement of Ethical Principles. I feel so passionate about these things, and I feel I've been so privileged to insert these things that are so dear to my heart into these global documents that hopefully will help with social workers developing critical consciousness. We are, as we were reminded earlier today by Paulo, products and producers of our socio-political, economic, and cultural worlds. The ideologies that we hold are reflected in and reinforced by dominant social systems, such as our families, education, culture, religion, economics, politics, and the media. And it is therefore critical that we become aware of cultural, political, and capitalist ideological hegemony and appreciate that we can shift, as Louis Althusser said, from being the subjected being to being a free subject that is the author of and responsible for its actions. Yes, we can become the authors and editors of our own lives, but only when we develop this capacity for this critical, absolutely acute and critical reflexivity. With the development of self-awareness and critical consciousness, there's a greater chance that we will use our voices and our skills to contribute to socioeconomic, political, and cultural change and development, and to environmental justice. With the current untenable conditions of millions of people across the globe, it is difficult, really, really difficult, to imagine the more deepened and brutalizing effects of COVID-19. I think that the unpalatable thought of this should be enough to stimulate us to use COVID-19 to reimagine our world. In this reimagination, we must challenge and undo neoliberalism, and adopt systems of socio-political and economic governance that promote greater solidarity. We must work towards achieving equitable, socially inclusive, integrated, and environmentally sustainable economic growth. We must work towards people-centered democracies and social justice, and recognize the indivisibility and interdependence of civil, political, economic, social, cultural, and environmental rights. I don't like the separation of different generation of rights that seems to privilege one above the other. It truly is an indivisibility of these integrated rights. While socioeconomic and political reordering are critical, there must be a reimagination of thought and attitude. I always say that the policies, laws, and programs and things like that we so often criticize out there are representations of the collectivities of consciousness of all of us. And we must, in this reimagining, see the dignity and worth of all peoples, right? And we must ensure that they are respected and responded to. And in this recognition of the inherent dignity of humanity, we must understand that this dignity is reflective of the divinity that exists in all. And that's why I started with that at the beginning. We are all part of that divine. And we possess that divine, irrespective of race, irrespective of class, irrespective of sexual orientation or nationality, or whether one has refugee status or not. We need to recognize that we truly do live in an interdependent world. In the face of this destructive pandemic, we need the more pervasive, powerful, and permeating cross-border forces of love, care, compassion, and solidarity. A world that sees the oneness of humanity, a world that embraces, as many extant spirituality says, and I end with this quote: "My soul honors your soul. I honor the place in you where the entire universe resides. I honor the light, love, truth, beauty, and peace within you, because it is also in me. In sharing these things, we are united. We are the same. We are one." Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Vishanti. I must say 2 or 3 things. And the first one, I think I can talk for everybody. We are very grateful for your talk. I'm feeling very grateful for your talk. It's very nice when I hear something, a discourse that I can identify myself with. So for me, and I think for all of us, was a pleasure, and it was very grateful to hear your talk. The second thing, out of curiosity, because things are what they are, and it's not always easy to see how things interconnect in the minds of people. There are Ubuntu, an open source operating system on Linux for the enterprise server, desktop, and cloud that also uses the Ubuntu. And it's because it's an open source based on Linux, which is curious. They went search for a name that could democratize the open source in the system. So Ubuntu, it's also a name for this program. Yes. And to finish, because there are, of course, questions, I must say this is a confession, Vishanti. My mind is boiling. I have so many questions and so few little time, because your talk was so rich that I have so many things in my mind to speak to you that I have to shut up myself and give the word to others. But I'm boiling with so many things that you said that I feel very honored to your talk. So I will now open the debate, and if I can, later on, I will talk to you, okay? Thank you.
Hi, Vicente. I wasn't here. My photo wasn't here, but I was hear you all the time. And when I hear a person like you, and I see that beautiful landscape, the sea, I think that you are so big as that sea that you have behind you. It's amazing how words, how the language, how feelings, how emotional we are listen to you. I make Tai Chi, so I know what is the feeling to see the nature and to understand that each day is a richness. So we are so rich, so good, because we live each day as the better day that we have for the future also. So thank you for your message, because after talking about so many things, and most of all, capitalism, racism, and those words that are so problematic nowadays, when we hear a person like you, we feel more than in heaven. We feel that we have future. So many thanks for your presentation, for your words, more than presentation, your words. And yes, you talk about languages. I think, and I want to hear a little bit more about that. Why we don't respect languages, the roots. Ubuntu talks about roots, about principles, about values. Why can't we, as you talk about the philosophy, why can we live like the I am because we are? It's so difficult. Why are we so selfish? Why are we so impure? Why are we so concerned about the future and about the value of the money? Because everybody here talks about money, talks about social problems, but at the same time, they talk about the value of the money. Why we can't understand languages?
Okay, Anna and Paulo, thank you so much for your immediate feedback. Anna talked about my being big. For those who know me, I often tell people it makes no difference whether I'm sitting or standing. I'm barely 4 feet 10. I'm actually a very, very tiny person physically. I'm talking about. It's I think, Paulo says that he's bubbling with questions. The truth is, I think a lot of I more than halved my written paper that I sent to Sandra, that I submitted, for purposes of managing this within a short space of time. And I think you're raising very important questions, Anna. And for me, I think, it's engaging in the kind of dialogue that Paulo Freire talks about, to really examine more transitive consciousness. Because surface level conversations can actually contribute to a more naive consciousness that can reinforce some of the problems that we hope to ameliorate in the world around us. So it would require, I think, you asking the question, and you raise why is there so much of a preoccupation with fear of the future? And preoccupation with money when these human values are supposed to take precedence over so much of those things. The truth is, it does require money. We know that money is important, but I cannot understand why Jeff Bezos has to have, $185 billion. And he's still asking the US federal government for some funding for space travel. My God, we want to colonize space, we've now colonized so much the world, we want to colonize space, we want to find water on Mars, and yet 30,000 children are dying every day. Yes, every single day, 30,000 children are dying because they don't have access to water and food. And I think, Anna, that's what you're talking about. I think so much is reflective of the screwed up values of our world, but I do believe that the more we open up the consciousness and the hearts of minds of people, the more we can perhaps, contribute to a broader societal awakening as well. And that is why I asked Paulo this morning about like the implications of your wonderful philosophical talk for bread and butter issues, that Jose was talking about, because it's got to translate into those kinds of, down to earth issues. I do this kind of work, by the way, with students when I travel on an international level with much experiential exercises, and that's what I enjoy doing, really examining these things experientially over a number of hours in the context of classrooms. And yes, if possible, online as well.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad you were there,
Vishanti,
Anna,
I must
because I brought
say,
in the hug especially for you.
Ah,
You told us
yes.
yesterday how you were missing your
Yes.
hugs.
Yes, it's not only namaste. It's I was written when I was listening to you, and it's like that. We are united because we are one. We are human.
Yeah, but I think this is the source of, and I think this is the other thing, like as academics sometimes, we tend to be so pragmatic. And I think we've lost in some ways the spiritual dimensions of life. And I think we need to reclaim that. I know in social work, we've inserted it again, with the global definition, and, more and more, even in the health sector, they're not talking about just biopsychosocial, they're talking about biopsychosocial spiritual. And we really, and I think if we're going to win the battle against neoliberalism, it's going to be through a reclaiming of that kind of core spirituality that does see the oneness of humanity. In fact, we look at each other, we see differences in terms of nationality, gender, race, and so on. But the truth is, at core, that drop of that ocean is exactly identical in you, me, and the 7.8 billion people in the world. And if we can transcend that outward differences and see the core of the sameness and the oneness, and maybe then we'll be willing to work against some of the greed.
That Tai Chi Chuan have words that call San Shu, that is free hands. And I think that when we have free hands, we can do lots of things and have faith. Faith is not only faith in nature, faith in human being, faith in that every day we have, like José Soeiro talk, we have work, we are happy, but we know that in the future there is somehow and somebody that if I need, it's nearby. That was in the past the philosophy of neighbors that nowadays sometimes doesn't exist anymore.
I have a question. I don't know if it's a question or if it's some kind of reflection. Vishanti, I totally agree with Ubuntu philosophy, and you were amazing in what you have presented. And I totally have the same point of view, but I was trying to think about what you bring regarding the Portuguese society, which is the neoliberal one, the Occidental one. And I was thinking that in my everyday life, as a teacher, as a person, as in my many roles that I have, I try to practice the values which has some in common with the Ubuntu. But in this society in which we live, what is the cost? The costs of living like that when you know that you live on a competitive society, individualized, and I mean, sometimes it's like if it was an utopia, bring the Ubuntu philosophy to the Portuguese society. I mean, we have some Ubuntu academies here, which are trying to make some bridge with social work schools. But when you go deeply into that kind of academy, in some way, in some part of the way, you will have to afford something, the formation or something. And that make me think about we are commercializing here the Ubuntu philosophy. I mean, it's losing its identity. It's I don't know if you have
No,
if I
I
was
think,
explaining.
Sandra, I think you are right. You know, I say that we can take anything, you know, you can take a beautiful vase of flowers, you know, and we can look at it and, you know, for its aesthetic appeal and appreciate it, but you can use the same vase to hit somebody on the head. You know, so we can distort and we can manipulate and we can abuse anything around us. And it's not only in the situation of Portugal. Pedro talked about, Paulo talked about Linux and Ubuntu, you know, and making, you know, information and open access and things like that. And that truly follows the Ubuntu principle. But there are a number of private corporations here that have banded on to the Ubuntu name and make profit in the name of it, you know. So, but, and also Ubuntu, must remember, I talked here about its positive impacts, because there's no time within the framework of this presentation to talk about the possible downsides. What we find here in South Africa as well, even within industries, in politics, you know, and so on, people abuse the concept of Ubuntu to mean unquestioning acceptance of what your elders say to you, because Ubuntu does emphasize respect, but it's like, oh no, you know, you're supposed to respect your elders, so you're not supposed to question them. And, you know, so employers abuse people who are subordinate to them and then expect unconditional loyalty in the process. And how do we maintain this kind of, you know, I'm using Ubuntu because that's what these global bodies have this thing, but as I said, it's universal. I think the spirit of Ubuntu is quite universal. I become concerned about the way in which we tend to dichotomize our world. You know, like African and Asian societies are more communitarian and together and, you know, things like that. And then the West, you know, tends to be more individualized. And I've seen some manifestations of that in writings that I was actually appalled by, the way in which we divide our worlds. You're asking about, you know, in this fiercely competitive neoliberal world that we live in, how do we maintain that spirit of solidarity? You know, that attitude that says we are one. I don't have an immediate answer to that, Sandra. What I do know is that it is doable. You know, it takes a lot. It is doable. It comes from my background. I think my Asian philosophical worldviews, the influence of Buddhism and so on, you know, with principles of detachment. I mean, I tried to introduce it in small ways to say, you know, picture yourself, you know, as an indivisible part of this ocean and reflect on it, but without judgment. You know, you are a detached observer. How do we live in this world, right, and above it at the same time? I have this tattoo here. You'll see. Where's it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have this tattoo here. It's one of two that I have. Okay, it's one of two tattoos I have in my whole body, but it's so symbolic for me. This year is of the lotus, right?
Yeah.
This year is of the lotus.
Yeah.
The lotus flower, go and Google it and look at all its symbolism.
Yes.
In terms of the symbolism is the roots are embedded in mud, you know, and the quagmire of the world around us, but the beautiful flower is detached in and is above it at the same time. So it's one of the arts of living, but there are several processes and strategies that one can use to reach there. This also has an Om sign above it. Can you see the Om sign? This is, the top is an Om sign. Om literally means I am. I am. And the philosophy that informs me is Tat Avam Asi. I am that, or thou art that. And that being that transcendent reality that we were talking about, right? And I think if we try to, it's not easy, but consciously remember that thou art that. When I talk to you, I remember working in psychiatry, and I used to get very angry with people, with antisocial personality disorders at times, I'd be really raving mad. And my supervisor was so good in one supervision session, just stopped me on my tracks, I was talking about my anger. And he said, but Vishanti, why? There's God in him as well. Really, that made such a profound difference to me, in that moment, to check my anger and understand, why am I angry? And to see that all people around us have God in them as well. And I do not mean God in any conventional sense, but that's for another topic altogether.
Thank you, Vishanti. And just more one thing, I'm not sure about the death of neoliberalism after COVID. I think it will be stronger and stronger. And even if I'm with you, and I want to be positive, and it will be great to see some change, but I don't believe in it. I must say it, yeah.
I think, like we spoke yesterday when Walter Lorenz was talking, and I asked the question, and he said maybe the metaphor that I was using about the cracks in consciousness, if more and more of us can leverage that, and put pressure on it, maybe we can. I mean, with Biden now, I don't know, we can hope that all these corporate, high-tech companies who are earning, Zoom, we're all using it, right? Zoom has made 4,000% profit during this pandemic, and it's not paying taxes. That's the issue. People like Bernie Sanders, and other people are constantly pushing, for this kind of corporate elite to be held accountable. Can you imagine how much more, of social democratic systems we can have if we had these really proper taxation? If, people like Jeff Bezos, and all these tech companies, CEOs, were actually paying their taxes, we could redistribute better.
Yeah.
So
you need more solidarity for that.
I'm skeptical about it, but as I said, I'm loath to believe what are the possible alternatives, especially out of the consequences of COVID-19.
Yeah. But I think that the solidarity which we will be needed for this change, it's not there. I mean, we talk about the solidarity as something good that came from COVID, but it was just in the beginning from the individuals and the collective, not at the political or global level, and we can see that on the vaccines. And maybe it's something related with something of Anna Arendt wrote one day, which is the banality of the evil, which it was also something that we talked about yesterday. So, yeah.
But consider this, the US, which is one of the most neoliberal countries in the world, Biden came around. And after Biden came around to support the world, South Africa and India in their call for the waiver, of the patents and intellectual property rights on the vaccine, then countries like France came on board as well. So we're seeing small change. I think COVID-19 has taught us in some way that we cannot do without solidarity. We need it, and I mean, the US has produced huge stimulus packages to people, and he's still providing it. Otherwise, people will die en masse, and it's saying people need caring, involved, interventionist states. So I'm hoping that, we can latch onto these and keep some of those benefits. In South Africa, our president, I mean, we in real deep step, yeah, problems, perhaps as tall as higher than me. But what he was saying, we have provided in small measures, income support for people. I mean, we've been advocating for years and years and years, and government has said, no way. They use a typical kind of responses. It'll make poor people lazy. It'll make them dependent. People will only use the money for alcohol and drugs and things like that. But for the first time, government has switched position. And even though it's small amounts, but has been providing income support, and they've been making promises that with post-COVID, there'll be continuity of some of the services that they've begun. So that gives me small measures of hope. And that's all we have now. We need the politics of hope. If we give up the politics of hope, we have little else to go on.
Yeah, right. Hope, it can be measured, even it's a little or big one. We need hope. Vicente, once again, thank you so much. It was very grateful for all of us, your talk. We already passed the time, but it was very interesting, and I don't have words to thank you, because I think you're a poem that breathes, and I think you are an amazing person, an amazing academic, and it was very grateful for all of us. I will now pass the word to Professor Ana Branca, who will share the next keynote speaker. Thank you so much once again.
So hello, everybody, once again. So I start last day and I stopped this day. Nevertheless, I'm going to present the researcher that are going to be with us at the end of the day. We are going to start with Professor Jorge Ferreira from Portugal. After, we will have Levi Leonido from Portugal, North 1. After, Ricardo Almeida from Portugal. And the last but not the least, Nidia Menezes from Portugal too. So I'm going to present, and after I give you the possibility to present your communication. So let's see, Professor Jorge Ferreira, doctor in social work, with a specialty in social work, social policies, and society. Associated professor at ISCTE, University Institute of Lisbon, director of the doctorate in social work, deputy director of the Political Science and Public Policy Department, is a member of scientific committee of the Department of Political Science and Public Policy, and also vice president of the Scientific Society of Social Work, Portugal. Professor Jorge Ferreira is going to, present us a communication with the title Social Work and Information and Communication Technologies, Development and Innovation. Please, Professor.
Olá, boa tarde. Good afternoon, all the participants in this conference. And hello to Cipo. A long time I don't talk with you. It's a pleasure to hear you again. Eu tinha a ideia que era uma apresentação em português, portanto, e ela está preparada em português. É isso?
Pois, assim não, porque relativamente às comunicações seriam em inglês, professores. Acho que a nível da estrutura organizativa tinham comunicado isso por e-mail.
Ok, eu vou transferir para o PowerPoint em inglês.
Ai, agradeço. Excelente, excelente. Muito obrigada.
Eu vou ter que voltar novamente ao meu computador, portanto, iria passar a palavra ao outro colega e depois eu intervenho.
Pois, as minhas desculpas, sem problema nenhum, sem problema nenhum. Então, deixem-me só ver aqui num instante, claro que sim, vou fazer a apresentação do conferencista seguinte, professor Dr. Levi Leonido, da
Em
Universidade...
inglês, Ana, em inglês.
Sorry, it's the end of the day, Friday, so many work, so it's normal that my mind works.
Ana, basta dizer cidadão do mundo e já estou apresentado.
Yeah,
sério.
but I must say something about you,
Não,
Leonido.
não.
Okay, Levi Leonido is a professor from Trás-os-Montes Alto Douro University. He works a lot with arts in arts area, also postgraduated in musician and representation in theater area from Salamanca University, also a postgraduation in also in science of communication and information of the Fernando Pessoa University of Oporto. Also, he has several reviews, scientific reviews, very important in art and theater, and also is a person, as he says, from the world. Mm-hmm. So he's connected with lots of countries that talk in Portuguese, and he's like a missionary in the defense of the Portuguese language.
Exatamente.
So I think that I said correctly. So he's going to present as a communication the various speeds of pandemic in various countries and context of the PALOP, so the Portuguese, the countries that talk Portuguese, a vision and the state of the art of the intercontinental spectrum. So Levi, please present your communication.
Okay, I try to talk in English, something. Okay. Now we present our communication, and already said that the title of our communication is a communication with Bartolomeu Rodrigues and Elsa Morgado, two colleagues from Porto, and two other centers of investigation, the University Catholic in Portugal, and we are institutional allocated to Mundis. Is a civic association will treats some kind of things linked with culture and artistic events. Now we can see that in the very government websites we should issue three examples to show you how the information is presented differently in these three countries, Portugal, Mozambique, and Angola. The information is disparate in presentation of the results in the website institutional of these countries. We have see this is a problem. Portugal, Mozambique, and Angola presented the data of pandemic COVID-19 in a different way. On the other hand, in turns, the Reuters gathers a global and partial information about COVID-19 pandemic. They triangulation the data from local service, from media, information provided to various countries, to the University of Oxford, and this own research. Here we present several other PALOP countries with information is more difficult to find in the systematic way. And after this, we can show you the more recent data from total deaths in PALOP countries. We can see the global terms, the numbers of deaths caused by COVID-19 in each PALOP countries. Unfortunately, Portugal leads this ranking with the highest incidence of cases and deaths, unfortunately. we can see Portugal and the other countries from PALOPS, the African countries that speaks Portuguese. In the other slide, we presented the percentage of deaths by population from PALOP countries, as I said, in which we can see Portugal has higher incidence of deaths compared to the other PALOP countries. The least affected in number of deaths is in fact Mozambique, as you can see in this figure. In the next slide, here we refer the number of deaths for the group of PALOP countries, which, as you can see, does not exceed 20,000 deaths. It's a short number when we compare to the other numbers we show after this slide. We show, in this case, we have the remaining Lusophonic countries to the PALOP. We include Brazil and East Timor. And the final figures now exceed 500,000 deaths in Brazil alone, which is, as we know, the second country in the world with more deaths caused by pandemic. It's more than 500,000 deaths. In the other slide, we can you can see the numbers of deaths distributed by the main continents which Lusophony is framed. The three continents, Europe, Africa, and Latin America. You can see the numbers is bigger than than we see before, and the percentages in which countries. You can see the numbers is very different. In Africa, in Europe and Latin America, when we talk about Brazil, we include more than 500,000 deaths. Now, we presented an example that we highlight. It's an initiative sponsored by Portuguese FCT, a Fundação of Ciência e Tecnology, which includes information about COVID-19 in at least 5 PALOP countries. It's very important, this initiative, to promote in this kind of information between at least 5 countries. It's not the whole of countries of PALOP and African countries that speaks Portuguese, but it's an effort that we highlight here. The final slide, I said to Paulo that our presentation is only about 5 minutes. Finally, we are a team of the researchers who see their activity in practical applications, and we research for solving problems. And we have 3 proposals to mitigate this situation experienced in PALOP countries. We have 3 proposals. The first, we propose promoting in large-scale advertising campaigns on television, on radio, in national, local, and newspaper and social networks or social media, giving work to the sector that is absolutely crashed in these times. It is culture and art sector, as we know, is the most sector was more damaged in this time of pandemic. And the second proposal is promoted thematic events from the state support. Now in Portuguese we say lei do mecenato. It's private institutions that give money to cultural and artistic activities. In English, maybe we can call law of patronage, I don't know. But in this case, the companies of theater and performing arts groups must include in their productions the dissemination of values of valid and technical information to population and spectators. It's a very important. When we talk about Lusophony, when we talk about countries with academic formation not so high than in Portuguese also. In the third proposal, we propose to create, in fact, a common policy for Lusophony, as exists in the European Union. In other words, to promote the sharing of vaccines, not so only vaccines, but to share information, to share research, to share logistical and human researchers, to means to means to fight a pandemic in the Portuguese way, in Portuguese language, with a perspective, a long term, not a short term or short term. At least I put this slide. If you want to know more about our institution, is Mundis. You can see all of the work we do is translated for English. It's an association that we have a mission to defend, to promote the Portuguese language. We also made some events, artistic and cultural events, congress, festivals, and we have 4 international reviews in Portuguese language to do and to practice this mission. This is a Mundis mission, and we only have the proposal, 3 proposals to finish our presentation. Anna.
Okay, thank you, Levi.
Okay.
After the 4 presentations, I will open questions and answers. Okay, so I don't know if Professor Jorge Ferreira is already with a presentation. I don't know, Professor. If you need a little bit more time, we'll a little bit more time. Yes.
You continue as another colleague.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to present the next researcher, and the next communication is Ricardo Ferreira de Almeida. Hello, Ricardo. I was seeing
Hello.
that you are okay. You are online. Thank you. So Ricardo is going to present. Who is Ricardo? Ricardo is graduated in anthropology from ISCTE, University Institute of Lisboa, master in sociology from the University of Coimbra, and a PhD in sociology from the University of Minho. He has been developing his professional activity in the field of education since 1997 as a trainer of professional education, secondary school teacher, and university teacher. He also has a special activity as a journalist and in cultural as a cultural activist, as president of a cultural cooperative, Trouxa Mocha, that is in the north of Portugal. So he works also in radio and in social media areas. At the same time, he works in several activities during festivals and summer and winter festivals, playing what we call gaited foles, that is an instrument very typical from the north of the peninsula, from Portugal and Galicia from Spain. So he also works in a theater, and his interest of study are sociology of the body, gender and sexuality, sociology of the theater, Portuguese ethnography, traditional music, medieval societies, and also human resources. So the communication has community and society in pandemic times, a criticism of dystopia. Ricardo, please.
Good afternoon. I think you have the tape because I sent it to you yesterday. So Damiana, if you are listening to me, you can put the record, please. Good morning. First of all, I greet all the participants and the listeners, and my communication is a reflection with suspended conclusions, as I dedicated myself to analyzing the dynamics and the movement that intends to provide hypotheses to explain the current state of the world in face of the COVID pandemic. So we cannot assess reality without resorting to historical analysis and how social relations are constituted according to a dominant model of thought. I have some rhetorical questions. The first of all, is the COVID pandemic designing a model of society that gradually imposes and recognizes itself in practices and sociability? So we should talk about development, and to do that we need to think about a particular moment in the development of the capitalist mode of production. So we need to make a backward to Second World War, and then we have to have the notion that the post-world Second World War capitalism has designed hegemonic centers who designs also economic policies presented with the face of democracy. And have some particular aspects, just like the centralization of the economic surplus of the United States of America, and with much more points. And the result is the control of the financial system. Second point is this model of development is based on a fact, is the debt creation, the loan linked to the ways of development. So some of the institutions, just like IMF or the World Bank, have the assumption that the state's economy must be destroyed to pay the debts. Then, and this have a particular history that I point in my paper. And third, the repayment of loans to creditors is often associated with privatization of the state-owned. So we talk about neoliberalism. Is the instrument of economic politics that capitalism each day uses in the most of the countries in the world. So debt and development, I call, not me, but lots of people who think about these issues. Debt and development forms an unlikely pair. This have a story. First, starts with from a point of epistemologic point of view, with the critique of labor value theory from Marx and Engels. And second is based on the Truman Doctrine that in the post-world Second World War creates a division between the countries from the First World, Second World, and the Third World, and builds a separation between the countries who have a capitalist mode of production, and the second world, the socialist, communist world of production. And then the Marshall Plan, since 1947, who built the European Union, for example, is European Union is a mandatory issue from the generals of the NATO. A bad part of the build of a vision of 3 worlds is the wars in Vietnam, the wars in Vietnam and Korea, and a repression of the Roosevelt political program for a New Deal, and also a persecution of all that not agrees with this point of view, and so they call it communists to everyone who made some criticism of this politics, economic politics, just like the Anti-American Activities Committee in United States of America. A particular form of talk about development comes in a moment in the history of the world who aggregates this world sustainably, but it was just a new way of talking about capitalism and in talking about ways of capitalism accumulation. And nowadays we see it from with another aspect when we heard and we read some of the publications, just like the Green New Deal or the Great Reset. So this have a story, and some of you know it, looking to this publication, just like the limits of growth, the report to United Nations, and lots of publications, just like the Brundtland report, lots of that. And development, what is called sustainability, covers up the production of inequalities in the name of articulated development between economy and society, and the conciliation between democracy and capital, while, however paradoxical it may seem, it punishes the environment. And so development means the development of capitalism that adapts and transforms itself in each context, associated with the ideological neutralization and discursive suppression of the real circumstances under which inequality is built. I bring you here some data about the agribusiness in Brazil and the limitation, the destruction of the forest in Amazonia. And we can see with this government of Bolsonaro, and then with Fernando Henrique Cardoso, with the neoliberal politics, the agribusiness is growing all over the world, but in Brazil in particular. So a great reset is a great reset. What we heard in some means of political finance and high finance, great reset is a great chance for capitalist accumulation, and brings another point of view of development. But it's not a new point of view. It's the same point of view, but with another words: the Great Reset, building a better world for all. And we can heard it, and in this context, we can see it about a week ago in the meeting in Cornwall and the meeting in Geneva. Nothing more than a fight for commercial dominance, who pretends to fight against the model of development preconized by China and Russia, called the new Silk Roads, and America. With some is add from in a body. Europe is just a finger. Brings another proposal for development called B3W. But if you read some of these proposals, we have nothing but ancient forms of development, ancient perspectives of development. So lots of people, lots of capital, finance and capital have interest in make money with the transition. So Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, writing a letter for all the CEOs, calls about this, about the historic investment opportunity that the pandemic of COVID-19 brings. So and then another issue is the green transition that is pointed to or is based in a crisis in Western industry and a crisis of profit and accumulation. With some preoccupations, just like quotas to pollute, carbon market, the damned carbon dioxide, which is neither a toxin nor a pollutant. Therefore, and then continuing this intent of capital accumulation and profit. We have the Aviation Alliance was linked to profit. You can see pharmaceutical companies' profits margin exceeds that of banking. At the top of this current year earnings, sales are expected to be around 30 billion for Pfizer-BioNTech consortium and 20 billion for Moderna. And share value of some pharmaceuticals soared the last year. And then with participation, the COVID vaccines are funded by governments. And in many cases, all the investment has made it for the government. So the vaccination creates another debt, excludes non-Western labs in this commercial war, and limits production to profits. At the end of this, we can see that called a concept from Michel Foucault, biopower. And we can see it from the microcellular point of view and the macrocellular point of view. The microcellular point of view brings a discussion about the ownership of one body, and the exercise of will refers to the spheres of compulsive medicalization and non-imputability, as if the individual no longer had rights and was not the owner of himself and his will. And from the macrocellular point of view, the use of technologies that allowed and globally disseminated telework, mainly in the third sector, and which, as a novelty, little socialized by the mass of workers, therefore, lacking a sensitive relationship with the real working conditions that they came to provoke, served as factor of production of added value and intensification of labor exploitation. The effects on labor work from the telework from the confinement produces a rise of unemployment rate that International Labor Organization indicates in these studies, and then a transformation in the position of the worker, not the worker now, but the employee, or in Portuguese, the colaborador, alienated from the historical conditions that shape their condition, admits digital supervision and be governed by complex algorithms, just like in Amazon not factories, but stores, that manage the entire work chain, from the recruitment and selection of candidates to their emotional and physical control. So, our conclusions, we can stay in the mood of passivity, acceptance, reform, and compromise, or we can assume a complete break with the foundations on which the economic development models of the last 100 years have so far been based. And then dystopia representing a moral critic of the dysfunction of demo-liberal models is conformism. It does not present any rescue tools because working within bourgeois thought itself is not aware of its own social presuppositions. Writes Lukács in the historian class. Historian class consciousness to judge that the modalities of thought are disconnected from reality, from the development of the productive forces, and from the class struggle, is to deny the movement of the capitalist mode of production. To insist on denying these facts is deliberately lying. The pandemic has daily effects on social interaction, and the fear of the physical proximity is instilled and is constantly guided by those who presented absolute numbers rather than COVID infection rates, who reject the scientific discussion carried out under scientific argumentation, classifying the dubbed method of denialism among other subjects that we still digest and whose movement we cannot detect. However, there are alternative paths that we should think about if we look critically at the reality and how it's composed. There is always light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ricardo, for your presentation. Now, the next one, I don't know if it is Professor George or Professor Nidia. Can please help me? Your microphone, please. your micro, we didn't hear at all. Yes, yes.
I don't know, but I can share my screen. I don't know. What's the matter?
Yeah.
So Nidia, you can.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, it happens. It happened the same with another colleague. Nidia, please. Okay, I'm going to present Nidia. Only. Nidia, it's someone that I know so well because we work together since so long. So Nidia she's a professor with a PhD in social science with a specialization in social work. She's making a second PhD in social work in ISCTE Lisbon, and also bachelor degree in social work in Coimbra. She works in a social work degree. She is the director of the social work degree in the School of Technology and Management of Lamego, the Polytechnical of Viseu. Is a member of the Research Center of Education Studies in Technology and Health in Viseu too. She is a supervisor master thesis in social organization, and also she is the supervisor of all the students in the degree and master degree of social work. She is also the member of CLIMB, that is a local council of support and integration of immigrants and migrants for all over the world. So the communication has the title Initial Training in Social Work During COVID-19 Crisis. Nidia, you have your time, please.
With this article, we intend to reflect on the challenges and potentials by undergraduate students in social work in the initial training process at a higher education institution when using distance learning for the needs of social isolation because the COVID-19 crisis, which caused the need for a higher education institution worldwide to encourage the new ways of promoting education, such as the use of distance technologies. The social work profession takes pride in its history of responding to societal needs, and while our social work knowledge, skills and values prepare us well to respond to current pandemic, the lack of social workers trained to work with people is problematic, although we should not lose focus on increasing the number of social workers. It is crucial that we recognize the urgency of the current situation and begin making key change now. For our current and future social work students, schools of social work must look the curricula such that all students graduate have the knowledge and skills necessary to work effectively. Initial training, the entire for undergraduate students, and the concept of theoretical practice, which according to Stepney is a central aspect of social work profession. Parton, as is the case with Fouque, argue that the construction of a new project for social work implies the assumption of three aspects, namely the formative, the practical application of knowledge acquired in a training context, the methodologic strategies of professional intervention. In this sense, we believe it's relevant, especially at this moment, to prepare future social workers to intervene in problems that are changing, must be object of reflection in construction of training curricula, which were impacted by the current social dynamics already signal. While the use of technology is not a new research for teaching and researching social work, technology is a living and indelible mark on the way in which our society has survived during the pandemic, along with our students, colleagues, providers, and clients. We have used technology to teach, learn, and educate, provide service, and stay connected professional and personally. So I got any questions? What are we including in our curricula that research about incorporating technology into practice and research? Are we teaching students to practically and ethically deliver service, including group facilitation via telehealth platforms, and how to integrate artificial intelligence into practice? Are we writing about innovative ways to intervene? These are the questions social work educators must answer by infusing necessary knowledge and practice skills within the curricula. The pandemic is challenging the traditional ways in which professionals communicate and work with one another interprofessionally in institutional and community settings. The Council of Social Work Education has recognized the importance of training social workers with skills necessary to work effectively with other professionals. The pandemic's call on the profession to review our approaches to interprofessional education practice and research and to strengthen where necessary. We should determine if the current strategies are effective and adapt as needed, thus for future implementation. Social work today has to prepare trained social workers to accompany the change in the model of state and society. According to James, in seeking to understand the impact of a neoliberal approach on social work practice, it is important for us to reflect on the uniqueness of social work, which is not due to a discrete knowledge base, but rather its perspective on people's problems in living and therefore the interconnectedness and interdependence of individuals with their society, believing that private troubles and public issues are intimately related. The knowledge base, therefore, is derived for research about individuals and society, and more importantly, about the dynamic relationship between the two. For conclusion, while the COVID pandemic will be remembered as a global crisis, unlike in recent history, we will all gain information and skills and that will change our personal and professional lives behind becoming expert in video conferencing. As social workers and researchers, we must work to ensure that our social work workforce has the education and training necessary to meet the demands that COVID-19 has placed on us. We must commit to providing the best care possible to families impacted by COVID-19, now and post-pandemic. Together, let us use the experience to bring forward the innovations that are being developed in this time of crisis and fight for the needs of our profession students. Muito obrigada pela vossa atenção.
Thank you, Nidia, for your presentation. Now we have Professor Jorge Ferreira. Thank you.
Hello, hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry for this. I don't know the problems this afternoon, but it's not a good day. It's I beginning the day with the second level vaccine, COVID. So, but I'm well, so it's good. So I try to give all of you some contribute to think about social work and technology, development and innovation for social inclusion in this time and in this period and in the next future we all have. And I talked the digital, and the digital is a form of social inclusion. But it's positive aspects, but it also alerts us to less positive aspects, such as the high percentage of the world population who are info excluded. The incorporation of the technology in professional practice represents a challenge and an important area in improving the management of social intervention process, interaction with the person, and increase the efficiency of service. During the COVID-19 period, Portugal faced health crisis, but also social crisis. We witnessed major difficulties in the social sector, not so much in terms of political or institutional capacity, but essentially in terms of the effective social response to citizens. A large part of these difficulties is a main reason the low knowledge and applied domain of digital skills that facilitate the necessary adaptabilities of the professional in a fast and emergent way to the context of social emergence. Reflecting on the reality of human resource in the social area, we conclude that there is an urgent and necessary need for the qualification of social science professionals with minimum digital and technological skills. According to Lopes, the technology are changing our lives, our process, our economy, the process of the exclusion and the inclusion and the social work intervention. And in this context, we go start a new postgraduate at my university, ISCTE, about digital social action. And this is the link if you like to look in the program. The current challenge is approfundize the collaborative model in the field of social intervention and digital process with the participation, with the inclusion of user participation. We have to introduce knowledge into social practice that is more focused on the technical dimension of the intervention with the aim of improving the service provided to user require the application of person-centered methodology. The system resulting from digitalization process must be dynamic and proactive as intelligent decision support system that help us deal with problems quickly and efficiently, given as analysis, paths of actions, anticipation of tasks to be developed, action plans, and new perspectives for the future. In this digitalization process, it is important to reflect on the concept of virtual agent or virtual client and its interaction through the mobile device and through a user-friendly interface with different software applications that will provide a personalized service for the user. For example, develop startups, ecosystem actors. The data science is an extraordinary contribution to the implementation of digital approach in the field of social action. Systems that help social actors solve user problems by showing them different activities options for each one, individualized action maps, future forecasts that anticipate problems that may arise. We live in the age of the information society and mean for all professional new developments that impact in the response and the service. More precisely, it is the people with needs who show the great expectations in the development of the technology and that can support autonomous lifestyle since they're in use of adapted technological that can compensate their lives. The concept of social inclusion, discussion at the United Nations around post-2015 developed agenda have led to the motto leave no one behind, reinforced by the Declaration of Social Europe Submit Porto Declaration. The intention is to ensure that all people, irrespective of ethnicity, gender, geography, disability, race, or social status, have equal access to universal human rights and basic economic opportunities. In this perspective, is not limited to economic well-being, but essential promoting an inclusive society, where institutions, structures, and processes empower local communities to take affirmative actions, with their governments to demand the guarantee of their rights. It also implies the participation of all groups in society in decision-making process, including traditional marginalized groups. And another element is important we reflect in social work and innovation and development is about diversity and inclusion. In contemporary society, we are witnessing an organizational and service culture that deepens diversity and the experience of inclusion through greater innovation, greater productivity, and benefit increase the involvement and satisfaction of workers. In this field, there is a need to invest in learning and gain digital skills in an intergenerational perspective. Recognize that not everyone masters the technology and probably some groups of professionals are no longer motivated for that learning given their age and their career in the company. And this important is that are not exclude for them the function and or working in the service and the institutions working. Another element is to think about the education, and the technology provide opportunities for learning about diversity and relevant inclusion topics. At work and in the community, workers encounter situations related to diversity and inclusion based on an inclusive approach to respond to these situations require education and practice. The closing of schools and education from home was a reality at the various levels of education in all countries. In the Portuguese case, we have reinforced the Minister of Education resource to a partnership with a television channel, returning to the old times of teleschool. But this is a good example of the complexity of the problem. If on the one hand, it seems easy to make the transition from face-to-face teaching to remote teaching. On the other hand, there are several issues that should be considered in this process. For example, the change of the function housing, workplace, infirmary, school, leisure, gymnasium, rehabilitation space, and catering school. This experience alerts us to following it is not about innovation and without reflecting on implementation context and effective condition for implementation. We also have to reflect on the consequence of this process regard precariousness, namely of the children who no longer their meal because the school is closed. The community intervention and social work is another field and another framework at the moment. A sustainability social basis for human life can only develop in inherent interdependence with ecological and the regenerative economy. This is a challenge for social work. In this process, we bring together transdisciplinarity, knowledge and research on sustainability transition, policy and practice in social work as a challenge for the social inclusion of precarious groups as well as people living in vulnerability communities. And in this way, we start this year a Marie Curie project about apply sustainability transition research in social work, taking major societal challenges of social inclusion. This whole process is supported by principle of design intervention, research and evaluation guide by network models, physical and digital, and by active partnership between the various agents that contribute to this transition to a digital society. We are facing a new culture of social model and society model that call everyone to one open mind and an effective social dialogue. In the digital field, we need both digital platforms, technological tools, and organizations that promote programs, actions, and social response in order to consolidate the production of knowledge based on science, but articulate with practice, ensuring effective effects when applied in the field of social inclusion and improvement of the people's well-being. The final consideration I think is important in this process of transition to a digital society requires a reflection shared by the different actors and the agents that interact in the complexity of the process. But it is also necessary to reflect the principles of equality and social inclusion in the access to the digitalization by analyzing the diversity of context at macro, micro, and meso level. We must look at the world as a whole and take into account the needs of development, underdeveloped, and developing countries. The world is not all the same, and in each country there is a diversity of context and territories. For example, the case of COVID-19 vaccines that we observe, a call for rich countries to donate vaccines to poor countries, a good example of inequality of access to universal human rights. And another things, but I passed. Another remark is it is essential to reconfigure public policies that contemplate financial support for the acquisition of means and software support, internet training, qualification of the workplace, and continuous monitoring evaluation. Public policies that implement mentoring of service and professionals, in the later promoting their self-esteem and mental health, preventing depressive and burnout situations. The need for the digital transition process to be combined by adapted methodology centered on people, human capital, guided by collaborative and integrated models sustained by an effective social dialogue between networks and partners. The digital transition process requires greater care in the field of ethical guarantees to prevent acts of corruption and promote equal opportunities and social inclusion through participation as a human right. The digital transition process invites us to deepen the dimension of culture in the with estimation that is as a fundamental element for social and human development. Finally, I conclude by reinforcing the need for connection, relationship, and/or interaction between formal, informal, and digital networks. Each of them cannot survive alone. They need to find a complementary and collaborative model in order to strengthen a partnership of excellence. The final questions are open. To improve digital skills in social intervention professional and communication skills between face-to-face and virtual. Innovate social action practice using digital tools and social work. Mastering technological literacy in social action and design social intervention plans based in digital technology and platforms. Articulate social response between face-to-face work and telework with vulnerable groups. Implement virtual communication mechanism with the neighbor social network, promoting the management of the social response through digital process. So thank you very much. And I'm sorry of the delay the time.
No problem. No problem. Everything is okay. So we are so glad because we could hear everyone and each one in your so great communications. Now we are open to questions. Please, for the 4 intervenients, if you don't mind.
Hi.
Oh, Sandra. Okay.
It's for Professor George. I can understand that sometimes technology may do things be easier to work and to be. I mean, for the bureaucratic works, technology, it's fantastic. But I'm afraid about the risks of technology in social work. And my question is, if you also think about the not so good consequence of the using of technology in social work. I mean, as you referred, some people doesn't has any kind of technology education, if we may say that. And also I'm afraid because if we have something, if we have felt something in the educational field with that technology and the classes by Zoom, it's that we are much more tired to teach online than in a classroom. And we are always receiving emails or iMessage or whatever, because students and colleagues are always online asking things, and we feel the need and the obligation to respond to what we think it's our duties. And you presented the technology regarding social worker as something that can prevent the burnout and can help on the mental health. And I'm thinking if it's not the inverse. I mean, the use of technology, maybe, I don't know, maybe it can increase the risks to a burnout or a borderline or something.
Posso responder?
Yeah.
I can respond?
Yes, please. It was directly. Yes.
Thank you, Sandra. I think your question have 2 dimensions. One dimension is about our working at the moment by online system and digital system. And in this case, I think it's our problem. You learning a new method of work at the moment. And we not adaptate at the moment our agenda to working in this system. We try, but at the moment, all of us working by online system to respond the emergency, to respond something, and sometimes we don't know well what we respond by the online system. This is one part of the question. And in this part, I think we need to learn more. Our methodology, our deontology, and our process work in online system. Because we need time. We need time to work, we need time to lunch, we need time to walk, and we need breaks, and so on. We cannot have a continuous process. And for example, I'm the last 2 weeks, I'm in the different kind of European and international research projects, and all times, all days, I start to 8 morning in day and finish 8 night, because the delay, the hours in the different partners and countries is very complicated to construction now one method adequate all of us, but we learn with this experience. Other question, I think, is about the technology applied in social work to intervention, the social problems and intervention with the persons, with family, with people at the community. And my perspective at the moment, and I'm integrating the large network to discussion and reflecting about this, and I'm in the one-line cost line about digital human rights. Is one way we need to reflect and thinking at this society, but we need to think the present society is a technology society, and the new generation is very qualified to working with the technology, because she born with the technology. But in our country and in other countries, we have a large percentage of the people don't have capacity, don't have skills to working and learning skills in digital process. And we need to bring in our country the mixed method working and the mixed process to articulate between face-to-face and digital intervention. Because we need to reflecting another problem is about the human resource at the teams in the institution and in the service. In the future, in the next 2-3 years, we don't have human resource sufficiently to respond the social needs and all people needs response by the social intervention. And we need to create some mixed process to orientate some response, some information by the technology and others face-to-face with a network, physical and digital network at the community, and reinforcing the partner and the stakeholders, integrate the persons, integrate the families, integrate the people lives in the local level, to participate in the discussion of the development in planning, developing local economy, developing local service, because need to participate. This is the empower of the local territory. And we need to change this philosophy to the social work intervention, because the social work is the first line intervention. He stay with the persons. He have skills to talk all the persons at the community. So is a strong skills, the social work have, the community have, the government have to develop a new way, a new response to well-being and the new global welfare by all the people in our community and in our society. And I'm sorry. So, and about this, I talk the collaborative process, because we need to develop and reinforce the collaborative methodology in work, not only the multidisciplinary team, not only the interdisciplinary teams, but the interprofessionality teams. And I'm working in one research project, is the middle time at the moment, about the interprofessionality in the multidisciplinary teams in the working to protection child and families. And it's very interesting, these results we have. And in this participate I and Belgium, Paris, Bulgaria, and Canada. We are the consortium, and I hope at the next year we finish and have some systematization, the conclusion about the competences and skills need the professionals to work in the multidisciplinary teams, to have a good result by the interprofessionality, okay? So I'm sorry, I'm very long, but and I hope to respond your questions. Thank you.
Yes, and I agree with you, Professor Jorge, because when we talk about digital skills, it's not only platforms in the education system. We talk about bracelets, we talk about touch screen, we talk about laptops in a health organization that can make a networking between the people that are inside the hospital or inside the social organizations and can talk with the family outside. So when we talk about digital, we talk about regional and local development that is so important. So we can't go away from digital system, but we can afford that we have to control the human being, because we are so technocrats nowadays that we use digital one for everything in every time. So that is going to be the problem, how to manage time. But I agree with all that you said, and most of all the interdisciplinarity and the interprofessionals inside a team to move more and more what the digital skills want for territorial cohesion that Europe talks about so much. Thank you for your answer to Sandra, but I like it.
I'm just afraid from your answer. It's not. I'm not o velho do Restelo. It sounds like that, but I'm not. I'm okay with the technology and digital world, but I'm very afraid. And you said something that we will not have people or social workers or professionals to answer or to respond to the needs of people. So the technology may help in this sense. My question is, aren't we, if we will do that, aren't we working hand by hand with the neoliberal system? I mean, shouldn't we apply for more human resource instead of try to get another response that will not need so much people, and it will not open any good thing for the employment in the world. I mean, I'm very afraid, because it's like when we are going to shop and na caixa Okay. Before you has always someone to do the bill, right? To give you the cash and so on. And now you have machines. You don't have any more human resource. I'm afraid that it can happen the same on the social intervention when we are talking about the digitalization work. And also, I have another concern, which is social work. It's about two kind of cognitive minds. One is the abstract mind, and which any computer can follow and do what we do with this mind. And the other one, it's responsible for the tacit knowledge of social work, the improvisation and so on. So I cannot very fulfill the idea that social work may be that the digital can be a responses because we will not have enough human resource. I don't know. I'm just thinking about that. I'm just divagating.
Okay. If I can say something, I think, Sandra, in my opinion, all of us need open mind at the new challenge in the society we live, because we learning with the society. We can analyze this period pandemic in our countries. 1 month we thinking, the next we don't have the mask, we go to the walk, the free, but the next week change again. So we learning day per day in this situation. And I think, Sandra, don't be afraid in social work, because social work adaptate. Because social work is a transdisciplinary area. So is the area talking all of the world, of all the people. And I think you talk about the economy, and the economy is important, but to the moment, I think the most important is the sustainability of the life and the different forms of life, all the people. And this another discover all of the people. And in this case, the digitalization process in social work, we have good practice at the moment in different countries, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and other countries. But this is an example, the good practice in this process. And I think we can learning with us, okay?
You know, Sandra, that one of the main professions in future is social work, because it's a connection with people, is to care people, and is presential. So since we're born till we die, we need social professionals, social work professionals. That is the real one idea. It's one of the biggest profession in the future. If it's going to be another way of looking for the social work in the social world, that is another question. But digital is it's not to do nothing with social work. We are human beings. We need care. So we talk about informal care, professional care, but social work, it's one of the biggest one, because the connection, the networking between people needs those professionals. And once more, the digital one, yes, e-commerce is reborn. Yes, it is. But that is the way, as like artificial intelligence. You can use it, but not for everything that social work does. I'm sorry. Okay, Vishanti, yes.
I also have a question for George, but anyone else can answer. And I think I share some of the concerns that Sandra has. Do you think that
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that the self-same technologies of neoliberal repression can be liberated towards an emancipatory politics? I mean, the technologies are here to stay, even though we know when we talked about it yesterday, 40% of the world's population is left behind in that they have no access to the internet. And that's something that's, that must be of concern the more we use the technologies. But there's a lot of literature talking about the absolute intersection between digital technology and neoliberalism. It is the mechanism through which neoliberalism becomes more and more entrenched. So how can we perhaps turn it around and use the technologies towards a more emancipatory kind of world?
I don't know. I understand well your question, but I try to respond in English, and I can see. In social work is common one discussion. The social work is one directly intervention, and one intervention working with the people face to face. But the clients of social work changed the last 2 decades in society and change every year. At the moment, in some countries, the most clients of social work is young people, is adult people in refugee situation, in immigration situation, in movement, in the different frontiers. And for this population, we can have new models to work. And in this situation, I think we can adaptate digital models and digital process to intervention. And we have some examples at the moment. For example, the common dimension we have in our lives by citizens. We have digital portals to do the tax, to obtain a Google Maps, to obtain the agenda to vaccine, COVID, the health, the supermarket, the education, the bank, the cinema, and different kind of digital networks to apply employment and social security and different kind of things. And we have the technical specialized dimension too. For example, the software help to rehabilitation people have disabilities, to working with the students have special needs to study. The educative platforms, the telemedicine, the social programs to do the exercise, the physical exercise, the nutrition, and at the moment, the social workers to promote some social projects to financing in the national or European or international program. All of these candidatures is online process and need skills to do that. Or we have some difficulties to promote some new response to the new needs we observe to the society. So, in my opinion, we need to reinforce the reflection, the analysis, and yes, of course, we need to analyze the
He's frozen.
Yeah. Yes. I suppose so. I suppose.
we need to
Professor.
present in
Okay. We didn't hear you so well. Estava congelada a imagem.
So, Sipol, I don't know, but I like to talk with you because you are very, very expertise to analyze the practice, the directive practice. And in the Asia, we have all times the new experience, the new practice, and the new perspectives. And it's very, very, very interesting.
Can I say something?
Okay, Ricardo. I think that you will be the last one, please.
Last one. Okay.
The last one, please.
It's very quick, and I'm afraid I'm not be able to speak in English in all terms, but I think that what we are talking in this is a major Occidental view, because we think about all the global South that in this moment. The global South, with India, with China, with Russia, with Iran, and other countries who are fighting in these ways with the dominance of United States of America and this hegemonic power as a center of economic affairs, don't have the same problems that we have here because of the particular way of the demography and this situation of economic growth. So when we talk about a few years ago, when you're talking about India or China or another countries, and we describe it on a map, they don't appear because they don't have electricity. If they don't have electricity, then they don't have technology or mobile phones or another thing. So we need to think global, and see that como é que se diz? A projection that in about 30 years forward, Europe means only 9% of population in the world. So we need to rethink about what is our priorities, and think about to choose another partners in economic, because European Union and as you say, the bazooka program will bring lots of surprises, will signify unemployment and other things. Thank you.
Okay.
Ricardo, I was thinking the same about the ethnocentricity. I don't know what to say in English.
Ethnocentricity.
Yeah,
Centricity. Ethnocentrism.
The accident. Yeah, and it can be some kind of a constraint of the research of Professor George, which is not bad. It's just something that could take in account. Yeah.
You know that I understand the research of Professor George because I'm in the same ideal system. And when we talk about, for example, Syria, about Brazil, about China, about Japan, Japan is high tech. When I went to Kyoto, I said, or to Osaka, I said, come on, I'm coming from the lost Europe, and China is the same. So when we talk about Ethiopia, okay, but if you see, everybody has a laptop or an iPhone, and it's not a mobile phone, it's an iPhone. So the same as cars, we have a paradigm in our mentality. I agree with Vishanti, but we have a paradigm in our mentality that the people that you used to see in the television that are poor, okay, that is a group. We have spaces in Portugal that don't have, they have electricity, almost electricity, but 5 years ago, it was spaces, local, village, that they didn't have electricity. And something more that is very important to health. So when we talk about several countries that don't have those digital issues or those digital instruments, it's a fallacia. For me, it is. But I repeat, I agree with Vishanti. There are some groups, there are some spaces, they are not allowed, they can't afford to have equal opportunity in this kind of technological and digital systems. I agree.
Let me say another thing, I think, to end. We talk about development models. While China is producing 10 engineers, United States of America are producing 10 economists that deals with finance. And finance, and we see the crisis that United States are passing by with unemployment and hyperinflation. I have said the new model that Biden have presented here in Europe, the B3W, is an alternative model to financing, but it's the same model and the same conditions as they put it in the Second War. So we need to learn about China, we need to learn about India, we need to learn about Russia, because lots of things, because of demography and the high-tech development, they are producing.
Okay, I'm so sad, but I must end those two glorious days. And if you don't mind, and the organizational team allowed me to finish, I'm going just to read something and to say some words to everybody, if you don't mind. We've come to the end of the International Conference of Social Worlds after COVID. Thank you. I say thanks to all of you, all of the intervenients, great communications that we had. For each and everyone, a big hug. As we say in Portuguese, grande abraço. It was an honor hear you, and for sure, we continued in reflection about the important information that each one gave to us. 2 extraordinary days. To our keynote speakers, special one. Does pandemic crisis stop us? No, of course not. Words that we must think about and make decisions. Walter Lawrence, thank you. Modern social solidarity needs to be organic, he said, not mechanical. Durkheim said that too. Dialectic relation between individual and collective needs, the personal and the ethics. Emilio Siriano, muchísimas gracias. He said, keeping positive strategies after COVID-19. Any tips for social work? And is the emperor naked? Or are we afraid of Gaslam? Our storytellings. Patricia Gouveia, muito obrigada. Heart, how that come to be multidisciplinarity and a solution for education system? We must talk about women in art. What about them? Are we numbers, only numbers, or are we involved? Muito obrigada. Agostino Serra, grazie tante. He said also, the obsolescence of human being, elimination of the other and the alien, danger of technolatry and nihilism, the network society risks to become a monistic society. Vishanti. I hope to say that in Zulu words correctly. Ngia Bonga. Tak in Norwegian language. The interaction, the introspection, the reflection, the vision of the outside of the box, the inside of me and the outside with us. It is so relevant as breathing. Ubuntu, love, care, forgiveness, a social political force. There are languages and philosophies all over the world, but we talk about work, about neoliberalism, capitalism, racism, structures in social work, structures and organizations in social world, support of the social world, pieces in social world, digital field, digital platforms, about what Alice see if she see her in the mirror, how art is so important as a way of change and have the right to have a voice. We talk about time, decisions, how we numbers, how we online, how we alive or living, welfare, well-being, value of money or value of human being, human rights and equality. Humanism, values of coexistence. We are united, we are one, the art of living. I'm honored to place on you. At the end, and for sure we will be together next year. It's not a promise, it's a reality. And we have the second International Conference of Social World and Technology. You are invited for it. A great hug for Professor Damiana and Engenheiro Pedro. You were special and so professional. Thank you for both of you to care of this conference in the backstage. To the group of organizers, Paula, Sandra, Paula, desculpa, Paulo, I'm so sorry. Pauli Castro, Sandra Mendes, Nídia Menezes, Levi Leonido, we are the best. As Levi says, let's continue the fight. Just a more sentence to think about. This is special to Vishanti. You remind from our youth, Saint-Exupéry, The Little Prince. Those who pass us don't go alone, don't leave us alone. They leave a little of themselves. They take a little of us. So I'm here because we are here. See you next year, and hope in the second Congress of Social World and Technology. We hope to meet you in reality in this north of Portugal. You are all welcome. And for the rest of the partners that were with us, Ricardo, professor Jorge Ferreira, eu não quero esquecer de ninguém, agora em português. I'm so sorry to talk in Portuguese, but I must do it. All Avilio Unido kills me in defense of the Portuguese language. I hope you don't miss everybody. But I talk about Gonçalo Mota that is here with us. Also Jacqueline, thank you. Elsa, okay. More. If I don't forget.
Elisete, Sara Melo.
Elisete, Sara Melo, yeah, all those, thank you, Paulo, all those that were together with us and make so great contributions. I hope to have, Paulo said that to us, we are working to promote a book. We hope that your contributions will be with papers to have that book printed. And yeah, I said goodbye to everyone, each one with a word that is Portuguese too. Lots of saudade. See you next year. See you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much
Bye.
for
Bye.
organizing.